We are families, we are caregivers, we are parents to children with disabilities and medical complexities. We are rarely familiar. We get together to learn, to relate, and to laugh a lot while we share each other's unique family experiences of raising the rarest of the rare. Our goal is to unite, inspire, educate, and empower people living a rarely familiar life. And we're so glad you're here.
Hi, welcome to Rarely Familiar. Haley and I are going to dig into the realities of raising the rarest of the rare. And today we're going to get familiar with a special guest who will share how one can pursue your passions in life despite having a medically complex child. So we will jump in and talk to Katie. But first, Haley, what's going on?
Summer, we're looking forward to going to the state fair. This is something that I've recently learned to navigate with my power wheelchair using 8-year-old. We pushed him around in his manual chair for a couple of years, but last year we took him in the power chair. That was a whole different thing. Independence in a giant crowd. So we're excited to do that again. Also very excited that the Momentum refresh, the accessible, universal changing station that's like a truck, will be at the state fair again this year. And it is truly the best bathroom experience at the state fair.
Well, you better put your running shoes on because I saw Felix at Sadie's birthday party. So Trom's daughter, Sadie, just had her birthday and it was a roller skating event and Felix was moving. I saw him in his power chair and he was moving. So
he goes way too fast.
Yeah.
Like 7 miles an hour doesn't sound fast, but it's fast. Like I can't run that fast. So if you've gone, you've gone.
So Julian and I discovered the Highland Friendship Club, which was awesome because we talked about this in one of our episodes with Patty Dunn, and it's an amazing organization for teens and young adults. We did 3 events with them last week, which is kind of crazy, but it was awesome.
You filled out the whole application form. You did the
membership. I did. It was very
You went-
simple. I became a member, signed up for events. It's a small fee. It was very easy to meet as a group, and there were probably 20 young people. And Julian was so excited. And then we went on a walk, and it was one of those really hot days. So it was like, gosh, this is a long walk. I kept thinking, are we going to turn back here? No, we're going to keep going. And then the next day we did the open swim at V3 in North Minneapolis, which is an amazing pool. And so that was really cool. And then we also went to the big game, which is the baseball game that Joe Mauer promotes through the Highland Friendship Club. And I was about 5 feet from Joe and I was ready to go up and say, hey, can I get my photo taken with you?
Or fearless. I'm like, I'm surprised you didn't selfie.
Well, it's because Julian had a meltdown. He was highly dysregulated and he was screaming. And I thought, oh God, just get me out of here. So it was an amazing event. Patty Dunn's crew really outdid themselves and I loved it all. But it was challenging to have to balance his kind of overstimulated body.
Yeah, you never know how those events are going to go. It can be the greatest thing ever, or it can just be a total disaster.
So anyways, let's jump into the show. Our guest today is Katie Sherman, who brings grit, enthusiasm, and a deep-seated curiosity to everything she does. As an imperfect mom of 4 and a spouse, she thrives on creating, moving, and learning. For the past 5 years, she has served as a physician assistant in general surgery, and before medicine, she worked in clay and taught art in a Spanish immersion school. Now, after adventures ranging from travel and living abroad to running 100-mile races and raising 4 wildly different children, she's taking on her greatest challenge yet, returning to medical school as a non-traditional student. Welcome, Katie.
Yes. Thank you so much, you guys. This is great. So excited to have this opportunity.
So before we dig in, I'm personally excited to have you on the show, Katie, because we go way back to early childhood special education class for our kids, ECSE. Our kids, Wendell and Julian, were less than a year old. And so we kind of met in that group setting where we're all sitting around a table. And each time we went, one of us was crying and just like, and then our kids went to the same elementary school. So our paths kept crossing. We used to live a block away from each other. We were both in Parent Magazine together back in 2017 and both on the Mary Hansen show in 2017. Like, we've done a lot of stuff. We've remained friends. I miss you. You live in Duluth now. And so I wish you were just down the street to go on a walk or come over and
Me
have a glass of wine.
too.
But it's so good to see you here today. So welcome again.
Thank you.
And I'm excited to meet you. I've heard so much about you through Jen over the last year or so. And I did watch that Mary Hansen show. So
Oh, good.
that you two were on. And yeah, it was a while ago though, wasn't it? So one thing we always like to ask our guests, I need you to share a fun fact about yourself, maybe something you haven't ever told anybody. And then what's your tie-in to the disability community? It might be obvious or it might be something less obvious.
Okay. Well, my fun fact is that when I was in high school, I got a job with Paramount Kings Island, which is like a Great America Six Flags theme park out of Mason, Ohio, which is just a little bit north of Cincinnati, where I grew up.
Mhm.
And I played the role of teenage Pebbles Flintstone. And I was in the kid show area in the Smurfland, and I had a big red wig with a bone
Oh,
and a leopard outfit. And I sang all kinds of obnoxious songs based on Jimmy Buffett and the Beach Boys. It was called Beach Blanket Bedrock. And
oh my gosh. So
we
are you a singer?
performed. Yeah, I was in theater. And so that was the direction I thought I was going. And I was like, yeah, this is going to be great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't know that about you. I love
Like,
that. I love
okay.
it. Are you still singing?
Just in my car to my children. Actually, who I sing to mostly is Wendell. And that's my tie into the disability community is my 14-year-old son, Wendell. He's my second out of 4 children. And our lives completely took a 180-degree turn with not really his birth, because it was the slow developing thing. It was really more about when he turned 6 months old that we just realized something was going on. And our journey from that point was forever changed. And we were just really hurled into the medical world.
Yeah. So you had another small child at home when you had Wendell.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Bjorn was about, 18 months. Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh my goodness. I didn't
So
really.
similar to
that close.
Jen's situation, right? Where you had one kid at home and then
Well, and also just
Yeah.
the realization for Julian is at 5 months. Oh, they're very
Yes.
little. At 6
Yeah.
months for you, there's
Mhm.
something off here. There's
Something
not
going
quite
on.
right.
Mhm.
I think the show is inspiring to me because despite his medical complexities, your ability to kind of power on and still do all these things that we'll dig into more. But can you
Can I-
tell us a little bit more about Wendell and like what his challenges are, what he's
awesome
presented with. And we always say that Wendell is just delightfully his own person. He's not like me, where I'm a people pleaser and I'm just going to say what you want to hear sometimes or put a smile on my face when I'm not feeling it. You have to prove to me that you can be my friend, basically. And so he has home health nurses and he puts them through the fire when they first come. So we warn them. He also has his own wry sense of humor, where we say that he really likes drama. So he'll start cracking up when his siblings are screaming and fighting at each other. Or the other day, actually, one of his previous nurses came to visit, and we were talking about how he liked Taylor Swift and how my husband, John, is not such a huge fan. And he just started cracking up. That was just hilarious to him. So
No, he's tracking for sure. He's listening to everybody's conversation and yeah.
absolutely. Well, as far as his medical complexities, we have come to find out a genetic mutation. He was undiagnosed for about 5 years. And that in and of itself, as Jen can also attest to, was just part of the battle of just not even knowing what you're dealing with. But basically, it kind of displays like cerebral palsy. Depending on where the mutation is on the gene can determine the abilities of the child. So he's nonverbal, he's nonmobile.
Is Wendell's diagnosis similar to Felix's and ours is 10q26.3?
Yes, it's all letters and numbers.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. They're numbers based on where the mutation is.
Exactly. So that's kind of what we're dealing with. It's on this ubiquitous receptor that encompasses pretty much every cell in our body. So after his diagnosis, that community has grown. I think there are now about like maybe 200 people in the world that share it approximately. But he has intractable epilepsy, so meaning he has seizures that are uncontrolled. He has extraordinarily low tone, so he's just like a floppy rag doll, and global developmental delays, of course. I will say, though, he has a smile that will knock your socks off. His receptive skills are much stronger than his expressive skills. So you can ask him a question, and usually he can respond with kind of affirming tone of voice. So somehow we also use yes, no buttons for him that we put on the side of his head.
Oh, so he
Can tap. Yeah, because he just has very limited mobility and dexterity with his hands. He is a huge fan of Taylor Swift.
He's a Swiftie.
He is a Swiftie. Yeah. Something that his father just rolls his eyes at.
Oh.
And we always say that Wendell is just delightfully his own person. He's not like me, where I'm a people pleaser and I'm just going to say what you want to hear sometimes or put a smile on my face when I'm not feeling it. You have to prove to me that you can be my friend, basically. And so he has home health nurses and he puts them through the fire when they first come. So we warn them. He also has his own wry sense of humor where we say that he really likes drama. So he'll start cracking up when his siblings are screaming and fighting at each other. Or the other day, actually, one of his previous nurses came to visit and we were talking about how he liked Taylor Swift and how my husband, John, is not such a huge fan. And he just started cracking up. That was just hilarious to him. So
he's tracking for sure. He's listening to everybody's conversation. And yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's kind of his picture. And obviously, when he is struggling with his health, his big thing is reactive airway disease. And just if he gets the virus, he just tanks. He just pretty much plummets. Or if he has a really bad bout of seizures, then it's just not who he normally is. And then you're really struggling to get through that personality. When he is well, he is a very happy guy. And we always say he thrives in community and he thrives with being out with other people.
So you and I were both at Gillette with our kids this winter. Stay, both Wendell and Jean. And I know that it was very serious for him. And is that still present in terms of what was going on with him? Is it resolved somewhat, or do you want to speak about that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. It is still, I think, a question mark. So the short story is Wendell was hospitalized for over a month at Gillette, mostly, again, with the virus that I talked about. He got some bug, just something innocuous, and it just really wiped him out. He had what the specialists think is just his years of reactive airway disease coupled with his low tone. What he started doing was obstructing his airway. And so initially we were talking about the trach and a vent, and that just did not seem to be an appropriate choice for us. And he pulled through, though. So we were able to bring him home on hospice, though. He still is accessing those services. I would say he is mostly back to baseline, but not quite. He will still be up in his chair, for instance, and for 30 minutes, and then he might start dropping his head and cutting off the airway again, where we have to do a jaw thrust maneuver. And it can come out of the blue, even if he's healthy. So that's a little disconcerting. We joke always is an ever moving target and always keeps us on their toes, because as soon as we get used to something, he just
and all the doctors and everybody.
Yeah.
Well, it's like it's never quite, you think, oh, now there's a pause and we can get on with our lives and do these things, but it's never quite like that with our kids. There's always something going on, right? So when I think of you in terms of you pursuing some of your passions and interests, hobbies, can you just kind of share with us, how long did it take for you to get to the point where you could pursue things outside of the home? Because I know when we were talking before, you said something about you can't be swallowed whole. And I think you were referring to, we can't let our kids' condition totally overtake all of who we are and all that we're doing in our lives. So can you just speak on that a little bit? 'Cause I think that you had some really great insight about that.
Yeah. I think that as far as when could I start incorporating those things, I would say honestly, it was fairly early on. As probably happens with both of you and your children, that first year was hell. I mean, it was awful because you have no preparation for the train that's coming at you and how your life is about to be affected. And so you're just pummeled by that. And so you're trying to navigate that. In the middle of all of that, I was taking Wendell to therapy and learning exercises. And because we had no diagnosis, but it was like, here, at least do physical therapy and see if we can get his strength up. And I was getting so frustrated because I was like, I'm pouring so much into it, but he didn't seem to be improving. And I didn't know if he could improve. And I just remember being so emotionally upset and frustrated at the whole situation. And then at some point I just stopped and I was like, I can only provide these exercises and bring him to therapy. And that's all I'm able to do. The rest is out of my control. Whether he's able to improve from that is going to be based on Wendell's body and condition. And that is completely out of my sphere of control. And to worry about that or to perseverate on it and be anxious is a complete waste of time. All I can do is present the treatment or the therapy. And I think that was an eye-opening moment and helped guide the rest of my course as I continued on with raising Wendell and then having an older child too.
So there's a level of acceptance that you kind of reach. And there is a moment like, I'm working too hard for this. And that's happening. And you see all these other little kids, it's like you blink and they're doing something new. And,
Oh, yeah, exactly.
all his age, it's really hard. And I know comparison is the thief of joy, but when you're in those situations, you're always looking around at, well, what is my kid supposed to be doing at this age? And then you start to look at all the things he can't do. But once you release that and there's a level of acceptance, you start to celebrate the things that he can do.
Exactly. Yes, 100%. And I think though that's a process. You have to walk through that valley, I think, individually to get to where it's this grief of the child that you thought you were going to have, and then the acceptance of the child you do have, and the celebration of that. And it's a dance for sure. I don't think it's ever this linear path, but you definitely have to walk through that to then come back and say, okay, this is Wendell's life. And this is who he is becoming. I'm also going to focus on who I am continuing to become. And I think that's where going back to those hobbies and your passions are really important, because you have to feed yourself in order to then give that energy back to your family. To do otherwise is to just be on this slow march of self-extinction. And
you're trying to give from an empty cup, which we all know is impossible, right? You have to keep filling so that you give from the overflow. But I think that first year, you do have to be all in. There's no way around it. The only way past is through, and you're just in, and you're feeling all the feels, and you're grieving, and all the things are happening. And then there's just something that shifts, and you're like, I was a human in here at one point. I had a career, and I was smart. I don't know where, I had brain. I don't know what happened to it. But
When you accept the lack of control, like with therapy, you can bring him to it, but you can't control the outcome. That also, to me, is parallel to, I can step away because I am not in control if he's going to have a seizure that's going to lead him down this path. That's just that acceptance piece to me. So I think of like you going on these ultra runs through the mountains where you're not reachable. There's no self-service. It's a practice of trust that, things will be what they will be.
Okay, so running, you're a runner. You go on runs through the mountains where no one can reach you. I don't know. I'm like, I can't even go past Duluth because I need to be in self-care. So tell me about that.
Oh, yeah. Running has been a part of my life since I was a teenager. And it evolved. It did then with my uncle initially, and then
Mhm.
kept doing it as I got older and through college and then beyond. And then started doing some marathons. And then eventually it felt like I wanted to do something more. And I had a friend who was doing ultra trail running. And I was like, oh, that sounds amazing.
Well,
Well,
marathons are way too easy. Way too
yeah.
easy.
I'm like, I don't know. But
Oh gosh.
right before COVID, and I started training for my first ultra
Mm.
and just found it to be very therapeutic. I just loved going out and being on trails, for one, is a lot different than being on roads. I think it's a lot more cushioning. But it's better for my body. And then you have all these kind of micro movements that you're doing, or it's not just plodding along. Um, I love it just to kind of let my mind wander, to just sweat like crazy, and be out in nature. And yeah, I don't take my phone. I do make sure somebody watching my kids, and I have support along the way. I'm sure.
Not just sleep.
Yeah.
But moving your body helps you to process, no matter what
Oh,
it
yeah.
is. Anytime you have some big traumatic event in your life or transformational event, there's something to be said for you going for a run or me taking a yoga class, just sweating, working through that. All the little places that we hold on to things, I think it can be very therapeutic. Talk therapy is great, but there is nothing like getting out there,
Getting-
body moving and sweating a little bit.
I have to ask the obvious question, though, the practical question. How do you do it? Not how do you put one
Like
leg in place of the
26 miles
other.
takes
No,
3
I'm
hours.
saying
Well,
I love to trail run too, but I can't go for that long because I don't have the ability to get other things done. I don't have this time. So, like, how are you able to manage that to go off on 6-hour runs? So, like, what falls out of place?
Yeah.
Like, how do you make it happen?
Yeah. That's a very valid question. So I'm not doing tons of 6-hour runs. When I sign up for an ultra, I work out my training plan, and it's mostly more manageable runs throughout the week. And then on the weekend, a Saturday morning is when I would do a long run.
Mhm.
A lot of it is on me because I'm waking up for sure at least by 4 in the morning to get out at the door and be home by 11 or noon. And I'm not out to win. I'm out to do my best and to finish the race. But I think it also depends on what your outcomes and your goals are.
Sure.
And that it's also absolutely maximizing my time. My friends joke with me. I know very little about pop culture because I just don't watch that much TV, and it's like I'm doing other things. So I think it's really finding the micro ways to manage your time elsewhere, because I'm prioritizing that run or that act or that hobby outside of this, outside of the rest of my life. So how am I going to then squeeze in everything else as well as getting time in with my family?
Do
Yeah.
you
So, the not doing those things is how you are able to do the things that you do. It's like,
Exactly.
do you have 24-hour nursing?
I do now, and that's a
Okay.
new thing as of
Okay.
Wendell's big hospitalization. We used to have
Okay.
16 hours, but my husband and I were doing more of the nighttime stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but yeah, the 24-hour nursing has been a
Yeah.
huge help, I have to say.
Mhm.
and then you have 3 other kids that you're also taking care
Yeah.
of, raising. How do you juggle that with one being very medically complex? Because I know for myself personally, I decided not to have more kids after Julian because I didn't think I could manage it. And I remember when you told me you were pregnant, I was like, "What? Oh my gosh, that's amazing." Like I was like, I didn't even think that it was possible for
Right.
you to do that because I couldn't. It was
Yeah.
very projection, very much that. But and then you had another one.
It wasn't my intention ever to have 4 kids, I can tell you that. But after
Mm.
Wendell, I was like, I really want him to have a community around him when he's older. And honestly, family is a huge part of that. I also grew up, my mom had 6 siblings, and they were kind of like my older brothers and sisters. So my mom raised me as a single parent. And so I think that played a role as well. And to some extent, it was probably naivete, being like, well, yeah, sure, we could do this.
Oh, you never know what you're getting yourself into with one or with four. You never know.
You really don't. And you're never ready. And it was just like, well, let's do it. Yeah. I think I do live my life, honestly, with that philosophy and not
Wait, no, well, it's here.
separate. Yeah.
Well, I
So
love it. Yeah, it's amazing. Those are good reasons to have more babies. I didn't think about that.
Well,
And something that Jen mentioned in reading your bio was, were you a ceramicist? Were you an artist? Have you gone back to that at all? How has your creativity helped?
yeah, that's a great question. I do love art. Like my degree is in ceramics. I did sell my work for a little bit in galleries and then I taught art as well. But I dabble in it now, I guess I would say. I use it a lot, actually, especially when I was studying anatomy and for being a PA. I do drawings with my kids and I paint cards. And nothing formal, nothing consistent, but I love just a good set of watercolors and a great #2 pencil. And I absolutely haven't put it completely away. Pull it out. It's definitely a
I
part
think
of my
you
life
probably
still.
pull it out more than you realize. I think tapping into that more right brain kind of creative, nonlinear thinking, I think it's the creative problem solving too that you have to do every single day with kids, with medically
Yeah.
kids.
Right.
How do I adapt this for, how do I make this thing so he can do the thing?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think that it probably is playing a role. Is just that using both sides of my brain and just trying to figure out, yeah, how do I solve this creatively, or how do I think outside the box?
Mhm.
It forms my perception and my outlook on the world. Yeah.
Yeah. And now you're thinking of pursuing another degree?
Wow. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's my new endeavor. And Jen talked about it. I've been a PA now for 5 years. And Wendell is fully to blame for sending me down this path to begin with. I actually, although I have to say, it's interesting how life works, because I did start out as pre-med in college. And then I took biology and chemistry. And then I thought, oh no, this isn't for me. And then I ended up doing art like my grandmother had done. So,
But the interest was there. So the
the
seed was
interest was
planted.
there. The seed was there. And I remember I shadowed my grandmother's oncologist. So I was certainly like prepared to go down that path.
Well, they do call it medical arts, don't they?
That is true. That is
And
true.
it's a practice.
Yes.
I find that interesting.
I know. And the surgical
Mhm.
room is actually the theater, the operating theater. So I think that's kind of interesting. And my favorite artist scientist is Santiago Ramon y Cajal, who was a Spanish pathologist, but he did a ton in the work of neurobiology and basically gave us the shape of the neuron as we know it today, because he did these stainings of these brain slices of tissue and would create these beautiful drawings. And he actually got the Nobel Prize in, I want to say, the early 1900s. He always said only true artists will gravitate towards science too. So there's definitely this
There's an intersection.
shared intersection with those.
You look at like the
people.
Vitruvian Man and
Yeah, there's
Well,
things
like,
she-
yeah. My son, Mackay, who's not Da Vinci, but he is highly creative, and he's highly scientifically oriented. And the blending of those two has served him very well with just thinking outside the box. His teachers will say, he's thinking outside the box. Other kids are not doing this. They're just like, boom. And eyes like up here and down there and all around. So obviously it's serving you well too. But I was impressed when you went back to get your physician's assistant. And I thought, oh my gosh, Katie, that's amazing. And so many people would say, that's great. You're doing this wonderful career. You're done. But you're like, no, I'm going to keep going. So what is the drive to keep going into becoming a full-fledged physician? I'm just curious to hear how this all kind of came to be.
how it all transpired.
Yeah.
Well, with Wendell, when he was born and when all that was going on, as crazy as that year was and terrifying and horrific, it was also where I was just finding being compelled again and pulled back to this deep fascination for the body, and just seeing how much can go awry, but also just seeing exposed to the medical world again. And that was initially what prompted my re-interest in medicine. And so even at that time, I wanted very much to go back and be a doctor. However, looking at the current state of my life and everything that was going on in it, I thought, this is not feasible. This is not realistic for me at this point. And so I decided, well, okay, I think I could go and become a PA. So that's when I started taking prerequisite coursework and just kind of did it as the semesters went by. I went to a few different community colleges in Minneapolis and to anatomy and physiology and biochem and just kind of collected them and then applied to school. And I thought, well, okay, maybe this will serve my need.
Scratch the
And
itch.
Scratch the itch. And it's been a great run. It kind of surprised me that I did end up in general surgery. But as I found as I was applying for jobs, that was kind of the one that I kept hitting click, send my resume. I just really like the hands-on piece. And I think that traces back to the art as well and the clay and just being so hands-on. So I've been in general surgery for 5 years, but throughout this time, I have not been able to let that desire go. And I tried to push it away, just say, no, this isn't going to work. I'm going to focus on the degree that I have and my family. And to be quite honest, it was just the incessant nagging of the voice in my head that would not stop.
Maybe it's Wendell in there. Just say, grow, do.
Yeah,
Like,
you can.
this is my legacy someday.
No, I do not know. I'm not quite sure, whatever it is, the universe or Wendell or God or something, but I just couldn't let it go. I just said, okay, I have to pursue this. I have to see if this will lead anywhere. And so I went back and I studied for the MCAT and I took an online class to help me do that. And then took a shot at taking the test. And then I did fairly well and then started applying to program. And just these things just kind of slowly coalesced.
So I'm kind of a firm believer. It's not like you cannot do it all, right? Like it's impossible. If your career is taking off, you're failing somewhere else. There's kind of an flow to things and a balance, right? Did you have to take away from something in order to focus on this next kind of goal for yourself? Or do you feel like...
Yeah, I did. Well, one, the long runs have decreased. Let's just do that. And this is in conversation with my husband, who rightfully is.
But that's reality. I don't want to paint the picture like you're going out for these 6-hour runs and you're studying at 4:00 in the morning. And
no. So in order to prepare for take the MCAT, I would wake up because I was working at my full-time PA job. I would wake up very early in the morning and do 2 hours of studying before work and then go to work. I might then do a quick run at lunch and then finish work and then come home. So yeah, absolutely. Something has to give. You can't do it all. And so even now, as I haven't started med school yet, but I am preparing, like my runs are now basically 30 to 45 minutes and I'm focusing on intervals and sprints and speed. And I'm doing strength training, doing 30-minute weight sessions. And I think that's going to be my biggest process from here on out is the time management moving forward with school, because I want my family to be an integral part of this journey. And I don't intend to just turn the switch from it. So I want to make sure, find ways to continue to connect with them and figure out this balance.
Yeah. But I do think it makes you a better mother. I think by pursuing your own interests, by having your individuality, I think your kids look at you as, yeah, I want to be that someday.
You agree. The practice of quality over quantity can be part of it too. You're going to have a highly structured calendar probably of this is what you're doing, but the idea that we can spend time with our kids and it's just being in the same space, not even maybe interacting. That's not quality time per se. And if you have an hour You might get
dedicated
way more
Friday
of a
night dinner.
connection. Well, yeah, I mean,
Right.
your bond could be just as strong if you have 1 hour versus 3 hours where, nobody's doing anything
Right.
together. But
Like our family soccer games are great for that. We just all go out, play in the field. I'm terrible at it and they love it. They crack up and they score goals on me. And yeah, it's great. And I'll hopefully be able to study with my 16-year-old who's struggling with algebra and I can be studying my anatomy. So I'm hoping, again, it's just going to be finding ways to maximize my time and set really strict boundaries.
There's a common thread in all of those people, though, that go to med school, and they are highly driven individuals. They've got 9 different interests, and they're succeeding at all of them. It's like not all of us were built for that,
I know.
right? And all the time, I'm in awe. I'm so grateful that there are people like that exist in the world. 'Cause
Well, you know what? I think we all need to know who we are. And I have one of my great friends, we joke because she loves to sit on her couch and read her book and eat candy. And she's, Katie, your life sounds horrible. And I don't even know.
yeah, you're still friends.
Yeah. We're still friends. Like we still have a lot in common. But thank goodness for diversity because I would not want a bunch of me around. I'm thankful that my husband is so different. He looks at me very physically. He keeps me in balance because I think we just help each other that way and we sharpen each other. I'm like Energizer Bunny. I'm like, what's that? I told John today, I'm like, I'm going to write a book after this, just so you know. So
Well, and there's something too. I have ideas too of going back to school, right? And it's also constantly coming up for me, going back and getting my LPC license and practicing and doing these things. And then the voice gets quieter because Julian gets louder and this happens and that happens and it keeps getting put off. But you gave a quote that you said life doesn't begin until 40, right? Who said that?
well, it's attributed to Carl Jung.
Okay.
And he said, yeah, life doesn't begin until 40. The rest, up until that point, it's just research or experimentation.
I love
Yeah.
that.
So
I love that.
I do
So it's never
too.
too late. It's never too late. My dad went back at your age. He got his PhD in psychology and he's been practicing for 30 years as a psychologist. So it's really not too late. But I guess going back to what I was starting to say is that people like myself have this idea of, I want to do this, I want to do that. It keeps coming up, but I can't pull the trigger. So what advice would you give to parents who have these passions that aren't coming to fruition because of what? Is there something that you could say or advice you could give to people like me and other parents and caregivers? So how do you make that first step? What's that first step?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to break it down because I think there could be 2 possibilities of what the struggle could be. Maybe it's an actual logistical struggle where the desire is there, but they're running into obstacles of how they make it happen. In that case, I would say you really need to thoroughly evaluate your community because it really does take a village. And so if it's time to go to a class or something like that, and you're really struggling with that, are there friends or family who could help support you in that dream of yours? And maybe it's shared over many people, but I think evaluating what you have in your surroundings and the people you have around you is going to be really, really essential if that's what you're striving to do. And asking questions and doing your research. So making it less abstract of, well, how am I going to make this work, to like, what are the actual barriers? And then how can you seek out help that can help to break those down?
I think the first step, like the practical side, when you talk about that, my stepdad was an Olympic runner, Ron does, and he always said when he was dreading the 20-mile runs, because back then they were doing 100-mile weeks, and he would say, you break it down to the first thing you need to do is you put your shoes on and you step outside the door. And when you step outside the door, you're probably going to keep moving forward the next step. And then that's what happened. So he never, ever didn't run if he could get himself out the door. And so
At least get his shoes on.
get your shoes on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sleep in your clothes. There's lots of tips and tricks that we can give.
I used to do that to get up for a 6 a.m. yoga class. I was like, I got to sleep in my yoga.
You
pants.
just have to do it. Yeah. But
Yeah, exactly. It's usually that first step. It really is just getting you out the door, literally or metaphorically. And I think as med school approaches, I've been making myself way too anxious by looking at the years and aggregates. And I'm like, no, this is just good. Going to class and taking it one day at a time. And that's all we're going to do. It's really breaking it down to these micro steps that you do where it, like for you, Jen, it'd be like, well, get information about your program and see what it would actually take. And maybe it is more realistic than you're actually envisioning it to be, but it's not going to go anywhere if it's just hanging there out in the,
right.
I guess if it's more of a mental barrier, I'll quote Ernest Hemingway, who said, hunger is the best sauce. And I think he meant that in a literal way, but it also applies very much to our desires. I've always tried to look at my life from my debt, moving backwards. Stephen Covey said, begin with the end in mind. And so where do you want to be when you are 70? Do you want to have that degree under your belt? And knowing that there will be sacrifices and things that will have to happen, or do you want to achieve that talent that you're working with? That I think asking yourself, what do you ultimately want? And reminding yourself of that motivation is going to be a huge factor in helping you to get there and to achieve that goal. Because once that fire is kindled, then the rest is just simple details. You need the motivation, though, to help continue with the journey and to spur you on.
That's great. I love that.
Mic drop.
Yeah. I'm just always kind of amazed at human beings being so resilient. We all have had this really shocking experiences with our children. And just the fact that you guys can bounce back and have this incredible podcast, that this is an extension of your experience. And similarly, and what I'm going through is absolutely an extension of mine, and just how we can turn a really detrimental experience into something beautiful, I think is just really inspiring to me.
Well, you are inspiring to me, and I'm really so thankful for you sharing your story and your insights and your tips, and it makes it seem feasible to tackle things. So I hope that the listeners can also kind of take that away and think about what in their life can feed them, because I think that is the key. That needs to be heard. You have to slow down. You have to be still, sit in nature, however you find your inner joy and where it speaks to you. But I think we just get so caught up in moving so fast and all the things going on in life. And if we can just all slow down a little bit. So
Yeah. And be reflective. Yeah. Thank you guys.
yeah, well, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day. And
Yeah, and truly best of luck to you on this kind of next step in your own journey. This is a big one.
Yeah, it is big. Yeah. Well, it was really nice to meet you, Haley. I hope we can meet each other
Sure.
in person
we'll go on a run. We'll go on a run together.
At some point.
Great. Yeah.
If you liked today's topic or have comments, questions, or thoughts on what else you would like us to cover, please visit rarelyfamiliar.com or connect with us on all the social channels. Resources will be listed in our show notes, and we'll be back next time with another discussion around living life successfully with rare medical complexities. Thanks for joining us on the journey.